Okay, we have arrived at 5:30, and it's going to be delayed just a second or two. We got one member who's on the way in, so. All right, so the hour of 5:30 PM has arrived, and I'll call to order this special meeting of the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. This meeting is being televised live on Channel 13-02. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the proposed operating budget will find it on the city website, and copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter the meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item being discussed. After being recognized, all remarks will be made through the chair, and I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak once. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Calling to order this special meeting of Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee, and I declare a quorum present. Councilor Remy has requested to be allowed to participate remotely. Councilor Remy, please state the reason for your request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am traveling for work this week.
All right, thank you. Unless there's an objection, the request will be granted. See no objection. And hearing no objection, Councilor Remy, please state your location and identify anyone else present with you at your location.
I am in Jacksonville, Florida, and I am alone.
All right, the minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Committee members, please be sure to turn on your microphones when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphones on. All right, so our regular agenda this evening has a number of items for discussion. And as, if I understand it correctly, the first item has been withdrawn.
That's our understanding. Was it communication from?
There was a communication from Mr. Toffler to the clerk's department requesting that it be withdrawn.
Okay, so we just grant that or just go
You can
past?
just accept it as information.
Okay. I'm going to move to accept as informational.
Sure. Move to accept as informational.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Oh, we're going to have to say. Yeah, roll call, so.
Councilor Lake, yes.
Councilor Powers, yes?
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Councilor,
Presume that was a yes. So, passes. And we're gonna, we'll alternate the motions so we can see what's going on. All right, item number 2 is the Public TV Programming Services Agreement. Who's gonna handle that?
I'll cover it. Rebecca's running a little bit late.
Okay.
So if you remember, we had gone out for a request for qualifications for a provider to provide public programming. Right now, we are providing the government piece of PEG, and we hired someone to assist in that process. But there's still been a desire in the community to do some public access. And we did this request for qualifications. We did not receive any submittals. So the FACT organization, which is a nonprofit organization based in Bellows Falls, Vermont, heard about our request for qualifications and then came in to meet with us. They do have an interest in contracting with the city to provide this service, and they have the experience, they have the structure, and so I'm asking the council permission to go ahead and start negotiations with them to see if we can come to some sort of agreement to begin the public broadcasting at the library again.
Questions from members of the committee?
Yeah, just a quick question. I mean, you might not be there in the process yet, but would this mean that, or would this allow our production or whatever content's created here to be broadcast in their other locations like Bellows Falls and vice versa?
Yes, for the public piece, not for the governmental, but yes, for the public. The plan would be for them to broadcast their programming here and our programming in Vermont. So we would get some additional exposure for the people who are producing programs.
Thank you.
Questions from other counselors? Other members of the public present? Seeing none, could we get a motion?
Sure. Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee moves to recommend that the City Council authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with Falls Area Community Television for the operation of public programming services on the local public community access television channels provided by Sectrum.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? In that case, we have a roll call vote.
Councilor Lake, yes?
Councilor Powers, yes?
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Councilor Remy, yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 3 on our agenda is going to be moved to be handled when we're doing the budget review for the fire department later on this evening. Not too late, but a little bit later. And item number 4, relating to the appropriation of funds for the Patricia T. Russell Park project and the Carpenter Street Flood Management Project. Mr. Engineer.
Mr. Chair, if you bear with me for just a second, I'll get myself hooked up here.
Pictures?
Pictures.
Pictures. Can't be a project, park project without pictures.
Maybe pictures? Ah. Getting closer. Where is it? Nope.
We had a little trouble with it the other night.
Oh, hey. Yeah, I know what I'm doing. Pictures. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Luce, your city engineer, and of course, our esteemed Parks and Rec director is with me tonight. We're kind of going to present this thing jointly. Item number 4 on your agenda includes 2 resolutions. Those 2 resolutions would be to increase the amount allowed for bonds on 2 previously approved bonds that this project entails. So taking a step back, believe it or not, this project has been going through a design process, pretty extensive design process since 2020. It involved a number of community outreach and workshops and whatnot. And we came up with, I say we like I had anything to do with it. Our designers and Andy came up with a really great plan for the project. What became kind of obvious very early in the design was simultaneous with this, we had the Carpenter Street Flood Improvement Project, which in the CIP called for replacing the drainage piping from Beaver Brook out to Carpenter Street, and then up Carpenter Street to Church Street. That was the first of several phases of flood improvements intended to address flooding, localized street flooding on the east side. It really, was pretty clear once we started looking at the two projects that they had to be built together. We obviously don't want to build the park and then tear it up to build the pipe. So we've sort of married those together. We had the same consultant designing both so that it could be put out to bid as a single uniform contract. So that's what we've done. The design process was completed. We put it out to bid over the winter. On March 31st, we received a grand total of 1 bid for the construction phase. Kind of unfortunately an ongoing theme this year. We've been having trouble getting bidders. Unfortunately, that 1 bid came in about $1 million over the appropriated budget. So, we went to that vendor. We came up with some ideas. We did some what I euphemistically like to call value engineering. It's really how can we get this project to fit within the available funding. So we did come up with several ideas. I think that those ideas don't sacrifice or diminish the quality of the park or the aesthetics of the park. And honestly, most of those ideas, nobody would probably even know that there was a change. But I'll run through them pretty quick, the important ones. The original plan called for bluestone pavers at the entrance pavilion and also over here in the picnic area. Those will be replaced with regular concrete. The original plan for the bathroom here called for a site-built building. It would have certainly been very pretty, but building it on site means you've got a lot of skilled labor, specialty trades that have to be brought into the site. It drives up the costs. It also takes a lot longer to get that work done. Working with our contractor, we've come up with some alternatives. So this bathroom will now be a prefabricated concrete structure. It'll arrive on site, already built one piece, and a crane will set it on its prepared foundation. Basically, it's constructed in a day. Other changes, we did some modifications on the landscaping plan, removed a few of the landscaping items, and some of the items we're going to be downsizing. So maybe instead of a 4-inch diameter tree, we might have a 3-inch diameter tree or 2.5-inch diameter tree. On the playground, the original plan called for a, I guess the term is naturalistic?
All natural.
All natural playscape. So, think logs and boulders and whatnot. Believe it or not, logs and boulders are very expensive. So as actually part of the bid documents, we included the alternative of having a more traditional playscape that Andy selected.
But not losing any of the elements of play.
So that alone saved us about $100,000. The bocce court was also bid as an alternate bid item, and that one we're going to not award the contract for the bocce court. The two stadium seating bleachers, I guess that you would call them, here in the Carpenter Street side will be 5 rows of seating instead of 8 rows of seating. So just a little bit smaller there. Andy, am I missing anything?
No, I think that was it. We really tried to make sure we maintained the integrity of the design without losing any of the elements, and I think we were able to accomplish that, changing out some of the benches from a higher end bench to something that you see in all of our other parks. So I think that was we did a lot of work to get our way down to where we are now.
So all that together, we were able to bring down the top line by about $410,000, $401,000. So just a little over 400. It still leaves us, unfortunately, with a deficit. So there's a couple of items on the agenda tonight. The first one is to increase the bond amounts for the two bonds associated with this project. There was a bond associated with the Pat Russell Park, and separately, there was a bond authorized for the drainage improvement flood management project. And both of those amounts would be increased with those two resolutions that are listed in item 4. The next item on your agenda is going to talk about reallocating other funds that are available to be reused. On the one hand, for flood management, there was about $100,000 of savings from the Roxbury Street project. That project actually was completed a little bit under budget. So we can shift that $100,000 from the Roxbury Street flood management to the Carpenter Street flood management. And it's, still using that money for its intended purpose. And then the last piece of the puzzle is $310,000 was authorized by the council for the police equipment fund. And luckily, the city was able to procure a grant, and maybe the manager can speak more to that. But because of that grant funding, all of the money that you authorized for the police equipment fund isn't needed for that. We can shift some over. So we're asking or suggesting that you shift $310,000 from that fund over to the Pat Russell Park. And that's the summary. I would love to take your questions.
So the police equipment fund was created in anticipation of implementing a body-worn camera program, among other things. And we were successful at getting a $415,000 congressionally directed grant for our body-worn camera program. So we will only need a portion of the police equipment fund to finish that project.
Members of the committee.
I just want to say the minute taker is calling me. Should I take the call in the other room? Well, sorry. Keep going. Shoot. I kind of like hit no.
This technology is great.
Yes. What can I do? Anybody here from the city clerk's office? Yes, Bill. Okay. All right. Yeah, bye-bye. The minute taker didn't get a Zoom invite and she can't join the meeting.
We'll get her on board.
Here we go. Sorry.
Britta, I'm here. I'm covering the meeting. I don't know who you're speaking with, but I'm here. I'm covering.
Okay.
What do you want to do? Want me to call her back? Say she's not covering?
Bill will take it. All right, well, if we're covered, let's continue.
So how have you been?
Just wonderful. So I think I should say that the wonderful lady who's having this site named after will be very happy to hear that money wasn't taken away from the police department, because she always used to say we were her favorite friends. But now she's got her own park, so I think she's going to very much watch over this project and be very pleased. We good to go, Tom?
Yes, we are.
All right. So, discussion, members of the committee. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the presentation, really appreciate it, and appreciate you guys really trying to stay slim of a budget as possible while still maintaining the feel of the park. Question on the bocce court, we're not allocating that space for anything else so that we could potentially revisit that in following years, right, if we did decide we wanted to put it in at some other point?
Yeah, if we don't award that, it'll just be planted as lawn.
Okay.
Yeah. But it is not forgotten and will be there's a couple grants within the community that I've been researching to seek.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Mike Remy, you all set?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have one question, if that's all right.
Okay, go ahead.
For the, have we reached out to any of the heavy users of the park? I'm thinking of like the rugby team, for example, to see if they have any interest in potentially contributing to maintain having 8 rows of seating or things like that that might be of value to them.
I have not reached out to them. We've had a lot of conversation early on related to the different project, the different amenities. When I did have conversation, oftentimes some of their funding resources didn't come through for them. So, but I certainly can reach back out to see if that's a reality. The bleachers, I think, are probably one of those gets that they might be able to accommodate, but I certainly will reach out, Counselor.
Okay, so let's see, whose turn for a motion? Go ahead.
Do we have to do each of these individually?
Wait a minute, I just remembered. So, other counselors here, questions? Members of the public? All right, now we can have a motion.
I guess I'm going to do them individually. Yeah. Okay. Move to recommend the adoption of Resolution R 2022-16.
Second?
Any further discussion on the motion? In that case, roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes?
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Counselor Remy?
Councilor Remy, yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes unanimously. And then the next one? You might as well do both of them.
Sure. Move to recommend the adoption of Resolution R 2022-19.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes?
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Councilor Remy.
Sounds like unanimous to me. Thank you. The next item also is Carpenter Street and flood management.
Yep, so this is the other piece of the funding. This is repurposing other money, as I mentioned. So the first motion would be the $310,000 from the police equipment fund into the park project fund. And then the second motion is $100,000 from Roxbury Street flood management to Carpenter Street flood management.
Discussion, members of the committee? All right, are there counselors here? Members of the public? Seeing none, motion please.
Okay, separately, right?
Yes.
The Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee moves to recommend that the City Council reallocate $310,000 from the Police Department Equipment Project 90324 and move the funds to the Patricia Russell Park Improvements Project 90316.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes?
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Councilor Remy, yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Next one.
The Finance, Organization, and excuse me, and Personnel Committee moves to recommend that the City Council reallocate $100,000 from the Roxbury Street Flood Management Project 90298-21 and move the funds to the Carpenter Street Flood Management Project 90298-22.
Second.
Further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes?
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Councilor Remy, yes.
Thank you, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can't tell you how excited we are about this project. The next item on your agenda, item 6, is also related to the Carpenter Street project, or Pat Russell Park. Now that we have the funds to move the project forward, we are going to be looking to hire a consultant to help us with the construction oversight and administration. I think I've been here a few times and talked to you about, my preference is, whenever possible, to have the consultant that designed the project, that is most intimately familiar with the plans, also oversee the work. They have a vested interest in making sure that that project goes smoothly. That's not always allowed under DOT's rules. We're not allowed to do that, but in this case, there's no such prohibition. SLR has done a great job on this project, and we would like to retain them for the construction admin phase. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Do I have to repeat all that?
No, we could hear you fine online.
All right, thank you. I'm loud.
There were notes either in this transmittal or another one. The firm that you've selected has done work prior and is reconstituted in a different name, or is that the other? Another?
That's, I think you're might be thinking about the next item on your agenda,
Okay.
which is the George Street Bridge.
All right, but you've worked through with this contractor and you're satisfied that?
Yeah,
they'll be able to
SLR,
follow
like I
through?
said, did all of the design work, and we'd like to have that same team overseeing the construction.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the committee? Members of the public? I don't see any, so motion.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a professional service contract with SLR International Corporation for an amount not to exceed $200,000 for construction engineering services required for the Patricia T. Russell Park Carpenter Street Flood Management Project.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by members of the committee? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes?
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Councilor Remy, yes.
All right, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You stuck with me for a little bit, I'm afraid.
We-
Item 7 on your agenda is related to the George Street Bridge project that you just alluded to. So this project was in the CIP, and I think you might already know this, but the way the state aid bridge program works, or state bridge aid, you have to appropriate your local match ahead of time, and then you can get in the queue to get state funding up to 80% of the project. At least that's how it's been done up to this point. I'm told that there may be changes coming from DOT on that, but those are the rules we're living with today. So the city council actually appropriated funds for this project in 2009, and I think there was some additional funds in 2012. And the amount that we appropriated was based on the DOT project budget that was developed in 2009. So the steps in the process, you ask them to do a budget estimate, they prepare that estimate, you appropriate your funds. Once the funds are sitting in a piggy bank waiting to spend, you ask them for state funding, then you get in the list to get the state funding, and eventually the project goes forward. But as you can see, it's been 13 years since the DOT did their estimate. Obviously, some prices have changed in that period of time, including the costs for design. Engineers like to get pay raises too, from time to time. So the amount that was in the city's budget to match the design fee is not enough to match the actual design fee that we've negotiated. So what we're suggesting is we appropriate $30,000 out of the capital reserve for the design phase in the current fiscal year. That'll allow us to move forward with the design. Within that bridge capital reserve, we kind of set it up with contributions so that we could ask for a bridge to be funded by the state every 2 to 3 years. And if we had hit that would have been fantastic, but unfortunately the state funding doesn't allow them to fund us at that rate. So right now, Maple Ave is not anywhere in the state's 10-year plan for bridge funding, but our money is already sitting in the capital reserve waiting to match it. So what we're going to recommend as part of that's as a follow-on action during the next update to the CIP, we'll be adding additional funds to the Maple Ave Bridge Capital Reserve so that when the time comes, we'll have our money made whole. But in the meantime, we're going to use those funds to match the design phase.
Questions, members of the committee? City councilors in the audience, members of the public? Seeing none, get a motion?
Okay. The Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee moves to recommend the adoption of Resolution R-2022-17.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by members of the committee? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes.
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Counselor Remy, yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And finally, now that we have that funding ready to go, we are also looking to award a contract to get that design started. So this is, it's not really a sole source contract. McFarland Johnson was selected through a request for qualifications process. That's one of the requirements when you're spending the state's money, is you have to select your consultants based on their qualifications. And then once you've selected the most qualified firm, you negotiate a scope and fee for the work. So we went through that process back in 2017, 2018 with McFarland Johnson. At the time, we advertised that for the design of both the Roxbury, the George Street Bridge was already in the state's 10-year plan, and it would be coming up quickly. So we did that process once. McFarland Johnson did a great job with the design on Roxbury Street. That project was closed out and I think, very successful, although I'm more than irritated that somebody hit the bridge recently. We're going to leave that alone. So we would like to continue using McFarland Johnson for the design of the George Street Bridge. And the item on your agenda next is to allow the city manager to negotiate and execute a professional services contract with McFarland Johnson for an amount not to exceed $245,000.
Questions, members of the public, or members of the committee? Members of the public? Seeing none, motion.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a professional and technical services contract with McFarland Johnson for engineering services required for the replacement of the George Street Bridge over Beaver Brook for an amount not to exceed $245,000, subject to NHDOT approval, with funding from Project Cost Center 90328-22.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes.
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Counselor Remy, yes.
All right, that is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
The next item on our agenda is the motion for the budget. And as typical fashion has it, we'll put this on more time. So somebody move to put it on, place it on more time.
Move to place it on more time.
Is there a second?
Second.
And any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes.
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Counselor Remy?
Counselor Remy, yes.
Thank you, that's unanimous. So moving into the second part of our agenda this evening, we have several departments for our annual budget review. And we're changing the order that we put out earlier as a format for this evening, and we're going to start with the library. So you're welcome to come up and join us at that table with the microphones. And in case you don't know, it's getting hotter and hotter in here, so. I'm not going to keep you very long. So,
Thank you,
please,
councilors.
Go ahead.
I'm Marty Fisk, the director of the Keene Public Library, and this evening I have with me Jennifer Alexander. She's the president of the trustees of the library, and she's going to do the presentation of the budget request, and I'll be available here to answer your questions and give clarifying answers.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. The library would like to start off by saying that we do support the Facilities Department budget request for supplemental janitorial hours at the library. This will help us to maximize our potential for earning revenue and properly maintain library spaces. The library is doing its best to increase revenue streams. At the start of the current fiscal year, the fee for non-resident cards increased by 17% for a 6-month card, and the annual card increased by 20%. Public printing, copying charges also increased on March 1st by 50% for black and white copies and 8% for color copies. We considered raising rental fees, but found it was not possible. The library currently does not have a regular janitor for the Heberton Annex, and the library must use an outside cleaning service for private events in this portion of the building. The cleaning company charges a minimum of $275 for cleaning after a single event. When combining this with our current rental fee, the total rental cost increased 150%, which is not affordable for most. Only one group has been willing to pay the fee since event spaces reopened in September of 2021. Other interested parties chose to rent at other locations that offered both lower rent and free parking. Currently, the facilities staff are cleaning bathrooms and floors only once a week. Library program staff are doing additional cleaning of event spaces and hallways after library programs. What is already very difficult will become impossible when the public access TV station reopens, library programs return to normal levels, and outside meetings take place. Due to this, the library supports the Facility Department budget's request for supplemental janitorial hours at the library. Without a janitor, things will remain the same, leaving valuable spaces unused, reduced income, poorly maintained spaces, and library staff spending time on cleaning and less time on their regular library duties. Now turning to the Library Department's request. The Library Department request column that you see before you does not reflect the library's actual request. It was explained to us that there were challenges in translating the request due to software changes. We'd like to clarify for you what the request was so that you are better aware of the library's needs. If they are not addressed this year, they will return before the council in future years. The city manager request increases the library non-personnel line by $1,025, $601 to public printing, $300 in equipment, $680 in collections, and $44 for photocopier lease, with a decrease in the postage budget by $600. The library's request had included a supplemental personnel request for conversion of a Library 1 in collection development to Librarian 2, and an additional 18 hours to make the position full-time. The city manager's recommendation reflects the conversion to Library 2 at only 32 hours. Short staffing has been a major challenge since the new wing opened in 2019, nearly doubling the library size and adding 3 new service stations, the teen area, atrium, and makerspace. Current staff hours only cover the makerspace for 30% of open hours and the teen area for 40% of open hours, but require 89 staff hours more per week than before the expansion. To date, 15 hours were added for a non-professional aide, and volunteers offer an average of 15 hours per week. This leaves the existing staff still stretched to cover an additional 59 staff hours per week. We shifted staff to cover these public-facing hours, but meanwhile, time for behind-the-scenes work such as purchasing and managing the library's collections are reduced. Plus, additional duties have been added, such as managing reservations for the doubled meeting spaces and scheduling, recruiting, training, and retention of volunteers. The conversion from Library 1 to Library 2 reflects the higher level of collection development duties taken on with the position. The collection department librarian will be responsible for 2 of the 3 core services of modern public libraries: developing a curated collection of materials in multiple formats and research assistance. Collection development is specialty work that requires a high level of professional training, a depth of knowledge of the existing collection, and an understanding of needs and habits of users. Duties include removing outdated materials, researching new resources available, the tracking of high-volume patron requests, publishing schedules, orders and deliveries, cataloging, and preparing materials for the users. The collection department person will be primarily responsible for meeting the library's target of the adult collection reflecting a variety of diversities at least by 30%. This does take extra staff time for research and tracking. There are currently only 2 people in a librarian 2 position, the head of the reference department and the digital services librarian, a total of 1.84 FTE. Librarian 2 positions are also responsible for providing service at the reference desk and are part of the pool that supports other service desks. With a community the size of Keene, the library needs multiple librarians in collection development to handle the volume of work, avoid lapses in service when staff are absent, and to provide variety for the user's needs and tastes. Because of the special skills required, this position will be a librarian 2, requiring a master's in library and information science, MLIS, plus 2 years of relevant experience. Part-time workers account for 60% of the average weekly staff hours needed to run the library at its current level of service. Within the percentage are 7 part-time professional librarian positions that require a master's degree or similar professional training experience. Part-time positions cannot provide people with enough income to provide for their living costs and do not provide health care and other basic benefits. It is especially difficult to recruit and maintain staff for part-time positions that require expensive professional education, such as an MLIS. The investment in their education requires individuals to seek full-time work, so they must move on as they gain experience. This puts the library at a distinct disadvantage in hiring and retaining qualified librarians. For example, in October of 2021, the department lost 2 librarians to full-time positions elsewhere. The library asked for 2 other items that did not get printed in the department request. You will notice that there is no line in the library's budget for software unique to the library. There was a request for administrative software at $4,200 to cover a portion of software costs that are now paid by the Friends and Trustees. This amount would only cover a portion of all the software the library uses, with the hopes of it increasing over time until it represents the true costs. There was also a request for library programs and supplies for $3,600 that would cover only 13% of last year's program support received from the Friends and Trustees. The Friends of the Library and the Library Trustees continue to heavily subsidize library operations. In FY21, the Friends provided $560,000, and the Trustees provided $11,796 in support. Together, they provided 31% of the library's non-personnel expenditures, including 100% of program costs, 80% of equipment purchases, 9% of collection costs, $1,327 for makerspace interns, and $8,631 for general administrative costs. However, the pandemic continued to affect the fundraising capability of the Friends of the Library. They were unable to hold book sales last fiscal year, and this fiscal year they were only able to hold 1 book sale instead of 2. This underscores the unsustainability of the library's reliance on fundraising for primary services of programs, equipment needs, and support of the collection. Hopefully, this provides some clarification of the library's full request, which we would love to have the council fulfill. We understand that there are several other important department needs, so this may not be possible. But if you were to relook at the budget and to consider funding something more, if we were to prioritize, we most strongly request that the Librarian 1 position be funded as Librarian 2 full-time. Thank you for your time. We would be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Questions from members of the committee?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead. Oh,
Let Remy go.
well.
I was curious if we had a financial impact analysis for that change, that single change that was we were just talking about.
Hang on.
I do have those numbers. So So a full-time position would have been $100,144 versus the $65,142 currently in the city manager's budget. And I also want to clarify.
Just under.
On page 17, the supplementals referenced this evening are in fact listed. If you go to page 17, you'll see that. The only items not funded in the city manager's budget include the items that are typically funded by the Friends of the Library or the trustees. And it's my understanding that the Friends of the Library intend to continue to support those lines, and therefore it was not necessary for us to include them. And in regards to the position, we did include the position at a Library 2 level instead of a Library 1, so it was an upgraded position.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask the city manager to weigh in, so.
All right. Anybody else on the committee? So typically, we handle this with discussion amongst the evening, and then we will come back to all of these budgets in the very near future. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
And we have a minute taker. It's got everything you said.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you so
counselors.
much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the folks here supporting the library. We really appreciate it.
Jan, I'm sorry. No. We haven't left the library page, so we're just about to, but.
Thank you.
Now, which one of you, which one?
Pardon? Pardon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Nice to see you.
Jan is president of the Friends at this point, so she will be the primary spokesman.
And this is the vice president.
They're high school buddies, too.
Yeah, we know that, yes.
That's what got me here.
And it's yes, so he understands the money better than me. You know, I was never good with money here, so this is what. So I want to respond to some of the comments that were made by the Jen Alexander and Marty Fisk about the Friends. I want to tell you that the Friends, that first of all, we are the Friends of the Keene Public Library. That is our name, and we are a 501c3. And our mission is to support the library and the staff to become really the best library that they can be. So in order to do that, we help them with the programming that they do. We pay for food, you know how the city doesn't like to pay for food. So we do that. Recently, we helped pay, we paid for the Spice of the Month. I don't know if anybody's been over there, but they have these little packets with the Spice of the Month. I don't know what it is for May. It was hot pepper for April, which, okay, not me. Maybe Kendall. We also have two programs that we do ourselves. One of them is Reading with Ribby the Swamp Bat, and the other one is the Museum Passes. And this one is, I think there are about 20 museum passes that are offered to library patrons. And the collection desk, or I think is what it's called, give them out to patrons when they ask. But we do all the legwork. And of course, most of them are, 20% off or 50% off or whatever. So we pay for that. And most recently, we are sponsoring, we're like co-sponsors of the Volunteer Fair, which is next Tuesday. I'm saying this to the greater public, if I could just plug that in for a minute. So we joined 4 other organizations who are don't have enough volunteers anymore due to the pandemic. And so we're doing a fair down at the Michael E.J. Blastos Room, Tuesday the 17th from 3 to 7. And we've been blown away. We have 25 vendors, which we're packing in there, but it should be a great event, and hopefully some of the nonprofits in the area can have some volunteers, and people new to the area can find out what's there. What do we have? And I mean, we have a rich nonprofit community here. I think that I will turn this over to my buddy here, if he could say a little bit about how we get our money and this thing right there.
Well,
I wasn't sure he was coming.
Thanks, Jan. I mean, the Friends raise a fairly substantial amount of money each year for the library. I mean, our biggest fundraiser is the book sale, which is something the city council always is aware of, that the mayor always issues a proclamation, and we come over and try to encourage people to participate in the book sale. We raise money through direct fundraising, that people make contributions to us, we do have some money set aside, a reserve set aside, and the income from that reserve is used to support us. We also get money from the casinos that I think we get about $16,000 a year we net from the casino as part of their nonprofit relationship with local organizations. This really, the amount of money that we allocate to the library really has not changed dramatically for over the past 5 or 6 years. For 2022, we allocated $18,000 for programming. That's the same amount we've allocated toward programming now for about 5 years. And we allocated $34,300 toward the collection development, new equipment, and various materials and service contracts that the library has. And that amount has not changed dramatically over the past 5 years. So that the level of support we give to the library, which was allocated, we operate on a calendar year rather than a fiscal year, so it doesn't always line up exactly with the city, but this really is money that's not part of the city budget. It's really over and above that, you know, it was $52,300 for 2022. It was $53,200 for 2021. It was $50,000 for 2019. So it's been pretty stable. It hasn't changed dramatically. If our fundraising was short in any one year, we'd draw money out of the reserve to make up the difference. But we've been pretty steady with our support for the library, and we expect that to continue in the future. So that you know, as far as how the money is specifically spent, that's really a library determination. They really determine for themselves how exactly they want to spend that money. But our function really is to raise the money and then make it available to them and then we ask them to give us a list periodically of how that money is being spent.
And just as an example, we pay, for example, to clean the fish tank, the wonderful fish tank, if you haven't seen it, up in the children's section. And we just recently paid for, and I have no idea what it is, this is where we totally trust the library, but it's called Bibliolabs, and it's self-publicity software, and we just paid $1,900 so that the library could have that. And I think finally, I don't have anything more to say, but finally, the library is also able, you know, should something come up, some sort of exciting opportunity to better the library, they can always come to us and say, listen, this would be wonderful for the library, the community would love it, you know, can you help us pay for it? And we would do that. So
And we'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes. I know you've already been going for an hour, so you've got a long night ahead of you, so.
Mr. Remy, a question?
Okay, very
All
good,
right,
thank
thank
you.
you.
None for me, sorry.
Okay, great, thanks.
Moving on now, we moved our schedule around a little bit. We're letting the airport director come up next.
Right, I appreciate that. Good evening, everyone. Dave Hickling, Airport Director. I want to start off, and I think everybody's aware of this, I've brought some things to this committee before, but the Keendale and Hopkins Airport just continues to thrive. We've got a lot of based aircraft. Our T hangars are full. We've got 22 people now on the waiting list for the T hangars, and we've got a strong interest in hangar development. We're currently negotiating with one developer, and we'll be starting with another shortly, and there's several others who have expressed interest in leasing land at the airport to develop hangars. Although the current economic trends, particularly with fuel costs, are concerning, we've not yet seen any effect on the operations at the airport, which is great. So the airport, the proposed airport operating budget is pretty straightforward. We've been able to reduce operational expenditures year to year. We've reduced some lines to make up where we had to increase other lines, but overall, we're reducing our operating budget by almost $6,000. So there's been a lot of effort going in there to just be fiscally responsible in our operations. Our revenues are trending upwards with increases in the gross revenue percentage in T hangars as well as through land leases. Our most significant change with the budget presentation, however, is the personnel services supplemental request. And that's what I like to focus on here for a moment. So the past 10 years, the airport's completed over $15.5 million worth of infrastructure capital projects, in which we received $14.7 million in federal and state funding, leaving us with just 5% of those costs of those projects. We're eligible for that funding because we're part of the FAA National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, or NIPIAs, if you like acronyms. Along with that being part of that NIPIA system and that funding, we're obligated to maintain and operate a safe, secure airport for aeronautical activities. And along with that comes a staggering amount of federal regulations that they give us to be able to do that. The airport staff is responsible for maintaining these facilities at the airport. This includes maintaining over 2.5 million square feet of pavement. That's almost 60 acres. Or another way to put that, that's equivalent to maintaining both lanes of Route 101 from here to Peterborough. So there's a lot of pavement out there that we're maintaining. Along with that goes the pavement runway markings, hundreds of runways and taxiway edge lights. There's lighted signs and markers, navigational aids, acres and acres of grass to mow, along with facilities responsibilities, including custodial, general maintenance, and landscaping. And then winter comes and just brings a whole new level of responsibilities as far as maintaining that safe operation. So we've been able to do all this very economically, largely through having one line for a seasonal staff to add to our staff, and then we really rely on other city department staffing too to fill in for snow removal and mowing and such things. It's worked really well, but when the pandemic hit a couple of years ago and we did a continuum of operation plan, and we started looking at the depth we have with people that actually understand the specifics of these airport rules and regulations, we were really thin. We have 2 people. So if one person's hurt or something, or another person's on vacation, we're just done. We don't have any depth there. We've not been able to maintain anybody under that seasonal line that we could get trained to be able to do that. So as you can see on page 144 and again on page 17, we're proposing to address this concern by by eliminating the line for the seasonal position and adding a full-time maintenance aide. And that will allow us to recruit, train, and retain someone who can learn all these specifics of all these aviation regulations and operating this airport. So I think, what we have, we continue to be fiscally responsible in operating the airport and work hard to reduce our expenses and increase our revenues. And I think this budget will allow us to continue to provide those services and meet those regulations. But it's also going to give us some safeguard to prevent potential staffing crisis if we were to lose 2 people. So that's the most of it. I didn't get into line by line, that they're pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Members of the committee, questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, nothing that you were talking about, but on page 144, Under 61602, standby pay, what is that for?
So we need to have somebody that can report to the airport anytime. We can't obviously staff it 24/7, but if something happens at 8 o'clock at night that we need a staff there, we have somebody on, we're paying standby, that they can respond at any time.
Would it be one of the regular employees, or would it be like somebody else?
It's one of our regular employees.
Oh, I see, and do you just sort of take turns, like,
Mhm.
thank you.
Same thing with weekends.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Wasn't sure which order you're going in. Please forgive me. I'll let the facilities director know about the AC tomorrow.
So this begins on page 109, and we're going to have some pictures again.
Should be hopefully coming up to, I know Nick was going to work with me on the screen, so. We're plugged in. I will go ahead and start, and if the screens show up, we'll make it work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Andy Bohannon, Parks, Recreation, Facilities Director. Also included in this is cemeteries and youth services in tonight's budget presentation. You'll find our supplemental requests on page 17 and 18, and I think we got some screenage. So anyway, so you'll see the various things, like other departments. We worked with the city manager related to some personnel requests, and I think as you saw in her message outlined on page 4, that working related to Russell Park and some of the future other projects, and we'll see where we end up in the future and how we continue to deliver our services, but I want to thank the city manager for continuing to work with us on that effort. We also have our narratives and metrics on page 109 and 104 through 114, our organizational charts on 115, our revenue details on 116, and our operating details on 117 through 126. As always, we are working through various plans to come up with our budget, and this is a year-round process that we continue to work on. The comprehensive master plan, our active passive recreation management plan, the facility condition asset report from EMG for all the different buildings, although that one is a little bit dated, and we talked about that in the CIP of updating, and certainly our capital improvement program that we just adopted, and of course, our JCC accreditation for youth services. One of the things that's important that you as City Council went through last year, updating your council goals, and updated them a little bit differently than what we had experienced in the past, and kind of highlighting to us and trying to match where we fit in, and these particular 6 council goals really impact parks, recreation facilities, and youth services. And I'm not going to read them to you line by line. I think you know your goals, but it's really important for us to understand how we match those goals and we continue to deliver our services. So our mission, just as a reminder to you, is to provide citizens of Keene with quality community services and amenities, including park and trail system, balanced environmental stewardship, and diverse programming to inspire and support active lifestyles for all ages. Certainly over the course of the last year and through the future in our vision, we are continuing to offer as many diverse programs as we can in trying to get our parks to be able to be accessible to all, so to continue to meet that mission on a daily basis. pardon the basketball pun, I found the court and went with it, but rebounding in 22-23, certainly you can see our program numbers doing that. Some of our thought processes, we know we're doing really well. You'll see in 2021, 22, those other programs served. You can obviously, those were actually, that was 2021, the other programs served, that last bar column. That is where all of the youth baseball, adult softball leagues, because they continued to play during the COVID process, per the guidance of the governor, and where we did not. But you can see the shift coming back from COVID. I think we're doing very well. Our numbers are strong this summer for all of our playground programs, all of our programs that we did over the course of this year. We're very healthy. We're building and growing and new programming through our budget, through assistant recreation coordinators. Those folks are really helping that program department really blossom in meeting more community goal needs. So we're definitely meeting our active and passive recreation management goals along with yours. So this is one of the posts that we had out regarding needing the need for competitive workforce. That was certainly in our supplemental requests, and we worked diligently with the HR director, the city manager, and the finance director to come up with a plan that would work for us to be competitive. I'm happy to say that our summer program on the playground side is full. We have enough program staff on that side. Our pools, which has been a heavy debate, we have 11 currently. We have 12 that it's going to be like we're just waiting for the background check to come back, and that's 12, and we have one more that is currently went for the test, got injured, and we're going to hold on to them for the season, and hopefully they can pass the test later. We did find a pool manager through an outreach effort of just an open house, and they're very qualified, and we're going to be able to change some of the way we do our training in-house to get more people certified. So that is definitely good news. And also on that front, we worked with the county. The county passed in their budget for training of lifeguards. So we will be reimbursed for any of the training that we do on ours from the county. So that was definitely a plus. Facilities, you heard an earlier request from the library related to their funding or position needs. Instead of hiring another part-time 20-hour person, we have a couple of part-time people already who need that extra time and do a really good job for us, and wanted to say, okay, we can give you another 8 hours and hire people that we already know and do a really good job and probably be more efficient in those hours that we give them than somebody new that we have to train. And so, and then in our parks division, we have our full summer crew already. They are off and running, and we could certainly use another body or two if we find them. But right now we're in sufficient mode, so we're doing well there. In our parks program, wanted to highlight, this is the first time anybody's seeing this except for Bettina, who's a member of the Ashwillet River Park Advisory Board. We worked with Antioch student Kyle Bradford to meet some of our climate resiliency master plan goals. And this is one of 6 boards that will be 18 by 24 in the park in different areas. They're educational signs to get people to learn about pollinator gardens, invasive species, some of the different trees that we have, so they can bring that piece back into their yard. It's kind of an opportunity to work with the Conservation Commission as well, so a lot of cross-pollination, if you will, in making sure that we are educating the public and meeting all of our goals at the same time. This is the sign that you will be seeing now that we have approval to go forward with the Russell Park project. This will be, this is the requirement that we have to have out in front of the park during the whole construction season. But these are some of the projects that we have this fiscal year. The skate park is still ongoing. We have a bid that will be coming into you here hopefully very soon. We have the Wheelock Park Campground repurposing dog park and disc golf. Our first meeting will be next week for that design process to kick off. And just that as Ashwillet River Park Climate Resiliency Plan implementation that you just saw, some of the signage. And that's a lot of collaboration happening between Antioch, the Monadnock Conservancy, obviously the Conservation Commission, and that advisory group. So a lot of people in the Friends of Ashwillet River Park, really, they have been instrumental in making that very successful. And then lastly, we'll be doing Robin Hood Park concept plan. And our trails, this is one of our posts that we put on our social media page. The trails is not part of our title, but we certainly take care of them and promote them, and making sure that we have capital plans to keep them moving forward, working with the Bicycle Pedestrian Pathways Advisory Committee. We like long titles. And making sure that we have monitor our level of service. So meeting your goals and our goals are key. 3 projects, Rail Trail Phase 3 is currently underway. You probably saw the striping on Park Avenue. That was done very early this morning and successfully, I might add. And so that was part of that project. We have the Transportation Heritage Trail that we continue to raise money for. We have our wayfinding project, the UNH extension downtown to trail study that you just recently adopted. That was key and instrumental to making the wayfinding program happening, and with our branding project coming down the road. Those 2 things are just perfect synergy to really make our trails something of a destination. And then, of course, we have the Goose Pond Stewardship Plan that you adopted a few years ago and continues that work. This particular group meets once a month and has a sign package that's going to be going out. We're doing a lot of work. We have a couple of workshops dedicated to trail maintenance, so we can gather volunteers to learn how to do trail maintenance and utilize those volunteers throughout the year. In our cemeteries, certainly we monitor, keep those mowed actively, and we are very active. And as you'll see in the budget, we actually consolidated some of our cost centers to make it more efficient for us in reporting purposes. And the project that I just brought before you a couple of weeks ago related to Find Your Loved One, that one is in the works as we speak. Our facilities projects, certainly they meet, this is one of the ones that hits a lot of your goals, as parks and programs do too, but really more on the environmental side, and you can kind of see some of these projects a little bit more. This one is up on the 4th floor. We just recently finished their entryway. This has been a pretty long project. This is the handiwork of our staff. We didn't hire a contractor. We saved tens of thousands of dollars. It took a little bit of extra time, but they do a phenomenal job, and I think it showcases here in this picture. If you haven't seen it, go up and take a look because they deserve a lot of credit. This is our newest generator, and that process has been processed. We've gotten the blessing, and we're just waiting the check from FEMA. So that is a good thing to get kind of that check mark done. But we in facilities, as we do in parks, are constantly looking for different funding opportunities. And so we've just certainly applied. I think the city manager announced last week related to the congressionally directed spending opportunities that we submitted for. So in other projects that we have, we've got the West Keene Fire Station schematic design and critical improvements happening this year, and roofs at the police station, rec center, and the Public Works Administrative side of the building. Youth services, this is a group that's kind of is a little low-key in some respects. Alyssa Bender, sorry, Alyssa, she came on in January and is doing a phenomenal job of working with Keene High School, broadening, increasing our programming, and showcasing a little bit different elements and thinking outside of the box. This past Tuesday night, behind closed doors, was basically it's a room that for high school parents to go and see, like a mock bedroom where they can learn about their teens. And experts and Keene Police was also part of this discussion about how parents can learn some of the behaviors that teens might have in their bedroom or different things that they might be looking for. It was well attended and something that we're going to be looking to do on an annual basis. It hadn't been done in many years. This was a good partnership with Keene High School. Hopefully we can do it along with some of the other schools like Monadnock and Hinsdale, which their youth services is kind of Cheshire County outreach. So their mission is really to help impact problem behaviors in the community and making sure that we can get them directed on the right path. Some of the changes, and these are some of the pictures from Tuesday night. The lower picture, you can kind of see that mock bedroom. And then parents talking with the police officer and the presenter about just the different aspects of what that is. So we have some of the challenges that we face in the diversion program this particular upcoming year and in the future is the state's kind of changed it a little bit. And DHHS has the initial intake, which also means less cases for us. We're still working with as many families as we possibly can. Means we have to create some more awareness to police departments around Cheshire County to work with us to get those petitions into our doors and let us work with them. We're working on alternative ways to outreach with youth, with the Monadnock Youth Coalition, creating some more programming between our program department and youth services. You'll see an event coming up this June on a Friday night with a movie and some community partners. I think it's really exciting. And of course, just trying to create as many collaborations as possibly can with this department. One of the projects that's kind of exciting for Alyssa is she's created a young adult diversion program over in Hillsborough where she was, and she brought it here to Keene. And we've had a couple cases already to be successful where these are 18 to 21-year-olds where they maybe get caught for alcohol or vaping, and to keep their record clean for, if it was a minor offense and it's going to go on their record permanently, working with Alyssa in this program to help clean that record off. So she's doing a great job working with the college and some of the police departments around the area. And then we always have our summer youth program, which is just right around the corner. So with that, I just would ask that you follow us and pay attention to what, we're recreation, so we want to be fit, which also stands for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can follow us on these different handles. And Youth Services also has a Facebook page, which I highly recommend people to follow. It promotes a lot of programs and resources for your teens. So regardless of what teen years are very, I'll be positive, coming right out of those. So challenging, if you will, and they can provide a lot of resources. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
All right. Committee members, questions? Yes, ma'am.
Andy, I know we talked about this before, and I didn't see it anywhere along the way, and that's a nice hefty body of goals and aspirations and work that you're already doing. But are there any further considerations of creating an app that would somehow integrate all the trail systems, so somebody coming here could use the app, and whether it's the Wall Dogs or Goose Pond or the Cheshire Rail Trail.
Yeah, so there's several different apps that are out there. I'm not sure the city may want to create their own app, but we want to promote one. Trailfinder.com, I believe it is. We utilized it in the UNH Downtown the Trails study. It has all of the trails. We've already, I worked with Will Schaffman, our GIS technician, worked with the folks over at Trail Finder a few years ago. We downloaded all of our information, so all of the city trails are in this particular app. It's free. Also, what's really cool about the particular app is you can businesses can populate it. So I know when I did my presentation, like Life is Sweet has populated it, the rec center. And the cool thing too, I've put in City Hall and the police department, and shown on the app that there's bathrooms available at these locations during these particular business hours. So if somebody's coming into town and they're riding, that they would know some of these locations along with some of the other businesses. I can't populate the businesses. They won't let me. I've tried. They want the business owners to do that themselves. But we have worked with the Downtown Business Group to promote that app as much as they can and put their information in. It literally takes less than 5 minutes, and you're literally on the map.
And so it would be like, not just for walkers, but also for mountain bikers, and that's
Yep.
great. I'm happy to know about that. And then I have one other question. When you had up here one of the slides that talked about the programs that had 2021 and 2022, and it showed the dip. There you go. Under other programs served, that one doesn't seem like it recovered quite what it was.
Yeah, so if you look at the time frame, July 20 through June 30, certainly you have COVID, right? And then we're still in COVID in 21, 22, but it just didn't, there's some funky things going on with our adult programs. I'm a former softball player, the Greater Keene Men's Softball League, and when I started playing, that was 25 years ago, but it was like 75 teams. And when I left, when I became director, it was 50 teams, 55 teams actually, and now it's down to 20 teams. So there's a real cultural shift within our recreation world in that segment. I think a lot of people are, that was a big commitment for a lot of folks, and disc golf, mountain biking, those individual outdoor sports that they can do with their families and spend time there. And also those who may have families might be, on that travel side of youth sports and going here, there, and everywhere every weekend. Or what we don't capture numbers, our Keene Ice has done a phenomenal job with growing their programs, and they continue to be full all the time when they're in operations. So some of those kids may have shifted. The other programs served are the Cal Ripken, the men's and women's softball leagues, those sort of things.
Yeah, because most of them recovered.
Yeah.
And it's actually a trend up, and that one didn't really.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Sir?
Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Mr. Chairman, committee members, good evening. I'm Steve Stewart. I'm a captain in the police department. Joining me is Captain Todd Lawrence, also from the police department. Our narrative objectives, metrics, organizational chart, and proposed operating budget for FY22 can be found beginning on page 127. Our revenue is on page 131. and our expenditure budget summary begins on page 132. Lastly, our cost centers details can be found beginning on page 134. I should have mentioned earlier that it's Captain Lawrence and I tonight because Chief Russo is under the weather and can't join us tonight. So our department's primary function is obvious. It's to enforce laws, investigate crimes, and prosecute those cases in court. Our mission statement is to protect life and property and to maintain order within the city while assuring fair and respectful treatment for everyone. Our fundamental belief is our mission statement is what guides our daily interactions with citizens, that treating everyone as fairly and respectfully as possible. We are currently authorized 44 sworn personnel, 11 full-time non-sworn personnel, and 13 part-time non-sworn personnel. We are currently operating short 2 dispatchers, an animal control officer, and 3 sworn positions, with 3 other non-sworn positions still in their initial training phases, so they're not out on the road yet by themselves. To ensure that we're meeting prudent fiscal spending, we conduct twice monthly budget audits to ensure funds are properly utilized and being paid for from the correct cost centers. This allows us to both properly manage and account for the department's budget and helps us meet the council goal of effectively managing finances. Examples of our efforts to accomplish more with the budget allocated include some of the grants that we received annually. Last fiscal year, that was about $90,000. These grants include some federal grants that assist us with some technical things, some Department of Transportation grants that assist us with overtime for enforcement, motor vehicle enforcement type activity. Some other Department of Safety grants that assist us in conducting narcotics investigations, and some Tactical Officers Association grants from the state that help us with equipment and training. Additionally, we have some federal law enforcement partnerships that allow for reimbursement of overtime associated with collaborative drug enforcement operations. I'll turn it over to Captain Lawrence now, and he can talk to you about our training and recruitment issues.
So our overall training budget does not really allow for an extensive training that is required to maintain a contemporary, professionally trained police department. Part of our requested increase for fiscal year 23's budget is training related. The majority of that additional funding for the training budget is for our field training program. This increase is a very good start for us. However, the need for additional training funds will only grow larger as newly required increased in training hours set forth by the New Hampshire Police Standards and Training Council at the recommendation of the LEAC Commission. This additional increase will need to be addressed in future fiscal years. To make up for the amount of required training, we continue to use scheduled adjustments to avoid training overtime costs. As of the end of March 2022, the department has conducted over 2,512 training hours. Through February 2022, we adjusted approximately 486 of those hours, which avoided the cost of over $30,650 in training overtime costs. We have reached our capacity, though, in schedule adjustments and will not be able to increase schedule adjustments any higher than this to mitigate any of the increased costs that the LEAC requirements occur. So this leads us to our recruiting and hiring. This continues to be our biggest non-operational struggle. As Captain Stewart alluded to, he gave you the breakdown of our open positions, 3 officers, 2 full-time dispatchers. Those 2 full-time dispatchers have, that position has been open since February of 2021, and we're finding difficult candidates to fill that void. But for our staffing issues, that trend is affecting law enforcement nationwide. Those who apply and who actually show up to participate in the initial testing continues to drop year after year. We continue to seek new ways, however, to recruit the most qualified applicants possible.
So many of you in this room have probably heard Chief Russo say this, if not once, many times before. We must maintain the 4 primary factors that affect the high level of service we provide. We need to hire the best qualified candidate, provide them with the best equipment to do their assigned job, train them to the highest standards, and hold them accountable to those standards. We can't deviate from this. To do this, we ask the council supports our budget so we may continue to provide the highest level of service to our community. Thank you, and we'll take any questions you have now.
Questions?
I'm just going to add to that if you don't mind.
Right ahead.
So in the city manager's budget, we did make some adjustments to training in response to the LEAC requirements as requested by the police department. And I do think it's important to remember we are going to have to continue to make those adjustments as those requirements begin to come due. They're really scheduled over a period of time, and over the next several years, we'll need to adjust as the training requirements are increased.
Mike, did you have anything?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. I'm trying to find, I'm looking at the comparison on 132, and where are those training dollars showing up that you're referring to?
Councilor Remy, if you go to page 135, there's a breakdown. If you look at police training and police patrol, police training, overtime tactical team training went from $20,000 to $25,000, and then the associated wage benefits increased in that line. And then overtime field training officer in the next category was 0 last year, and that is now included at $21,000. And then below that, you'll see the adjustments for the necessary wage benefit changes.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you feeling lonely back there? Your turn.
For the record, the air conditioning works very well in this hotel. Just
That'll be
letting
enough out of you. So the fire department begins on page 92. Chief, welcome. This is your first go around with us, so we'll be easy on you.
Probably much needed, thank you. Good evening, I'm Don Farquhar, the fire chief. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the fire department budget to the committee. I'll be somewhat brief in my opening comments to allow for the city manager's presentation of the staffing committee's recommendation and follow-on discussions. The fire department's budget appears on page 92 through page 102. In support of the written narrative on page 92, I would like to offer a few opening remarks about the fire department itself. We are very much more than just a fire department. The fire department provides technical rescue services and assistance to the entire region. We are one of just 4 departments in the state that are designated to respond to swift water rescue emergencies. We also provide technician-level hazardous materials response services to the region and provide backup for other statewide teams. The department also provides paramedic-level transportation and ambulance service to the city, 4 contract towns, and to the entire region through a mutual aid compact. In fiscal year 21, our out-of-hospital cardiac arrest save rate through our paramedic-level service was exceptionally high. Our cardiac arrest save rate, which is probably the most important metric of measuring the efficacy of an EMS system, was very much in line with some of the highest performing EMS systems in the country. As a brief side note of interest, it's pretty cool. On June 2nd, the fire department members will be attending a celebration of survival event. So celebration will have 10 cardiac arrest survivors in a nice celebration where they get to meet and interact with the teams that helped revive them. And that's a pretty cool thing. And the reason those folks are alive is due to the application of the American Heart Association's chain of survival, which starts with early recognition, early CPR, rapid defibrillation, and rapid arrival of advanced resuscitation by EMS providers. So that is an excellent example of the importance of tax dollars, truly life saved. The department continues with its strong historical record of successful state and federal grant awards, resulting in a total grant award amount last year of over $650,000. Those grants have deferred tens of thousands of dollars of the operational budget to provide medical supplies and allowed for us to acquire durable medical equipment that was quite expensive. We are awaiting the grant award decision on 2 FEMA grants for this fiscal year. The first grant is an AFG, or Assistance to Firefighter grant. That grant is for over $400,000 and will be used for the purchase of some very much needed technical rescue equipment and provide technical rescue training for the firefighters. The second grant we'll speak more on later with the staffing recommendations, and that's the SAFER grant. SAFER stands for Staffing and Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. We're just about in that zone. We'll start hearing back on those grants. The SAFER grant is traditionally a little slower than the AFG grant, so we could hear anytime between now and really September. I'm very confident we'll get the AFG grant itself, and I think we have a very nice shot too at the SAFER grant. So we're very much looking forward to the news on that. For current staffing, in response to increased demands for departmental services, the department a few months ago moved from 9 personnel a shift to 10. That additional personnel has been accomplished with the existing amount of employees. In other words, did not add any full-time employees. The additional staffing had an immediate positive impacts on service delivery to the city. For the long term, the city manager formed a staffing committee. The recommendations of that committee will be presented this evening. For current approved positions, we extended job offers to 2 new employees, which bring the department up to full strength of all approved positions, with the exception of the deputy chief's position, which is created by a promotion, and the fire prevention officer's position, which is created by retirement. For both positions, we have been very fortunate to receive many qualified applicants, and we are currently moving through the hiring process for those candidates. For the budget itself, you can find the department revenues on page 96. The department revenues are projected to be a little over $2.22 million. For overall expenditures, that will be on page 98. The overall expenditures are a little bit over $7.8 million for the department. The overall expenditures reflect several approved supplemental requests. The approved supplemental requests were selected from a larger list of supplemental requests proposals that can be found on page 17. Through a very thorough process of analysis and prioritization, the fire department realized $61,769 in supplemental funds. Those supplemental dollars break down as follows: $31,344, which represents both salary and benefits for a new part-time assistant to assist our department administrator. On a brief note of the fire department's administrator, Kelly DeRoche, she is the best boss I ever worked for. She is invaluable to the department. Her work output is amazing, and being able to add that position is greatly appreciated. She will do very well. That will gain a lot of efficiencies with that. I know there's a lot of competition for positions, and we as a department are, to our core, truly very grateful for that position. An additional $7,500 in equipment maintenance, which will be used to execute some long-term maintenance contracts for our durable medical equipment, such as IV pumps and ventilators. We transferred $8,000 from our existing paramedic training line item and added an additional $21,500 to pay for a grant match portion of our previously awarded AFG grant that is currently sending 4 of our current firefighters to paramedic school. That program started last night, actually. So about a year and a half from now, those 4 firefighters will graduate from paramedic school, and we'll add probably the rarest thing to find in today's fire service, a very competent firefighter paramedic. So that is a great example of using grant funding to greatly improve the department. Also added $1,425 to increase the EMS licenses and certifications. And that's all I'm going to say. So in closing, I would like to say the City of Keene Fire Department is a very high achieving organization which provides a high return on investment of the taxpayers' dollars. The members of the department are exceptionally talented and truly dedicated to their mission. I'm very proud to be their boss. I love coming to work every day, so thank you for the position. I'm truly grateful. And I would like to thank the city staff and the council members that supported the department's budget preparation process. That concludes my remarks, and I welcome any questions.
Please.
So I have a great group of department heads. Nobody gets everything they want in the budget. And we go through a process of prioritizing what gets put into the city manager's budget. And the chief mentioned briefly that he had 10 items, and we sat down and we said, we can't fund all of those. Which ones are the most important to you? Which are the most needed? And then we agreed on those items, and those were included in the city manager's budget. So I think it's important to say that, because it's the same thing with staffing. When we come together and we evaluate staffing across the organization, there's a lot of compromise that has to be had, and the organization as a whole works together really well to take turns and to say, okay, this year I am going to get maybe not everything I wanted in terms of the adjustment, but we're going to make some forward movement. And that's been the case every year that I've done the budget here at the City of Keene. And I'm really grateful for the work of the department heads to help me make that happen really for you, because it's the only way that we can meet our fiscal policies. So the chief's done a great job at doing that, and I think this budget, meets the needs. We are going to talk about the fire staffing report, because really the big changes in the fire department will be based on wage changes and needs of the department. The part-time administration position that's included in there, some additional hours for someone, really came about as part of the overall fire inspection conversation and sort of the backlog of activity and ability to schedule appointments. While that position will do many other things, that is a primary responsibility of this part-time position, and it became very clear during our analysis of the fire inspection program that it was needed, that needed to be someone's job to follow up on those inspections and track them and monitor them. So the other thing that didn't happen to this budget as a result of the city manager's final budget recommendation is there aren't adjustments to overtime. Last year, we made an adjustment to the overtime. I think it was $100,000. And I was intending to make another adjustment this year. That's not included, and that's not included because overtime is really tied to fire staffing. And all those numbers change, and so that's really part of the overall staffing analysis that we'll be talking about at least partially this evening, and then I assume we'll talk about it a lot more before things are finalized.
I think what we ought to do is just give members of the committee an opportunity to ask questions of the chief on this presentation, and then we'll slide into the report that the manager put together and wants to talk about personnel, additional changes. So do you have questions on the budget presented this evening? Go ahead.
Well, I was just looking on page 99 under 61302, Assistant Department Head. So 2019, it's 111,000, 2021, 112, and then it jumps 100,000. And I was just trying to understand, is it like...
Second deputy.
Oh, okay. So there was only one deputy, and then they...
Yes, second
okay.
deputy.
One was on the field, it wasn't funded.
Got it. Thank you.
Michael?
His air conditioning might be too loud.
Yeah. Mike, you all set on the regular part of the budget? Okay, thank you. All right. So, we'll give it to you. It was a very nice report that I hope everybody's had an opportunity to go through. And manager will highlight it for you, and we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So the Fire Staffing Committee was created back in February. So February 4th was our first meeting. Members of the committee included Councilor Powers, Councilor Remy, retired Chief Mark Howard, Chief Don Farquhar, Deputy Chief Chickering, Finance Director Mary Howe, our ACM HR Director Beth Fox, and then we had union membership on the committee as well. So we had Christopher Staples, Dan Newell, and Jason Martin, and Bradley Riley. And then we had the help of Kelly DeRoches and Helen Matson. So they were helping us, pulling reports, putting things together, and taking notes of the meetings. So we had a pretty good-sized committee. We had good representation. We had the help of the finance office to run numbers. We had, the union members there to answer questions and give us really a good understanding when a number didn't make sense, and so that we could dive deeper into it, a conversation. So, you know, I have to go back a few years. So I've been here almost 5 years, and almost the entire time I've been hearing the fire department needs more staffing. And there's been multiple requests from Chief Howard in the past for more staffing at the fire department. It's never really made it until now to a deeper conversation. We looked at a variety of different things. You know, we looked at, you know, paramedic only, firefighter and paramedic. Where do we need the staffing? Until now, we've taken a pretty deep dive into the numbers and the number of calls, the trends, to understand the time of day, day of week, when these calls were happening, to understand were the calls in the community or outside of the community? Are we making back our money and our contracts with our outside communities for ambulance service, really to get a good understanding? And so the fire staffing report included in your packet this evening, hopefully will tell that story for you as we pull together a great deal of data to do that. So the one thing we do include in that packet is a history of the fire department so that you can understand when there were changes in the fire department in staffing. Was it an administrative change or was it an operational change, and when? And then I think really the most compelling chart in the packet is the one that overlays the staffing with the number of calls and provides trend information. So if you look at the data that we collected, you will see in the first block we talk about the number of calls. And the majority of our calls are EMS related. That's not a big surprise, we know that. And the majority of our calls in 2021 was EMS in town, and then we break that down. That was 65%. We even went further to say, okay, that's the total number of calls, but how long does it take us to respond to these calls? So we did work to determine when the call started and when the call ended and how long it took to answer that call. And so we broke it down by hours. And then we looked at, like I said, our staffing. One of the things that became very clear is, you know, we've had 40 firefighters, so not including administrative staff or chief officers, we've had 40 firefighters since 2009. Our call department, who had been heavily involved, has really significantly, the activity in that department has really declined. Where at one time we used to have 30 active members of the call fire department assisting the full-time firefighters. We really, last year in 2021, we only had 2 active members. We had other members, but 2 that were very active from the call department. So you'll see in our recommendations, we need to work to strengthen our call department. But we can't rely on that. It is a trend we've seen across the nation. Volunteer firefighters, they're just not participating at the same level. I'm not sure if it's because work culture has changed, where, you know, I remember the day when someone would be working for a private company, the tone would go off and they were allowed to leave their job and still be paid and respond to their local fire department. That doesn't happen as much anymore. So I'm sure that's impacted the availability of call firefighters. But that's a part of our staffing, and that has been on the decline for quite some time. So there's a history of that in your packet. So then if you overlay the number of calls, our calls have increased from, we had 3,638 calls in 2009 to 5,005 calls in 2021. That's an increase of 1,367 calls with the same number of firefighters. So I tried to overlay, you know, during that period of time, did we change the number of firefighters responding? We hadn't since 2009. So we have number of calls increasing, we have less call firefighters coming in, but we've maintained the same 40 firefighters responding to those calls. The other thing we looked at was overlapping calls. And so in 2010, since 2010, we've seen a gradual increase of overlapping calls from 28% of our calls in 2010 to 32% of our calls in 2021. Then we looked, like I said, at day of week and time of day. You know, it's very interesting because you want to understand if it's only a certain day of the week or time of the day that they're busy, maybe we staff differently in terms of the hours that they're working. But it's pretty consistent. And so there's a chart in your packet that shows that, yes, we are slightly less busy on Sunday, but it's only slightly. And then 7 a.m. through 10 or 11 seems to be our most busy time. And then we looked at callbacks to understand when firefighters were being called back to assist. And, you know, we know, because we've been looking at our overtime for the last few years, and the overtime amounts are going up, they're tired. So they don't come back unless it's a second alarm. You know, if it goes to that point, then they know it's a real call, and then we see more firefighters coming in to respond. But that first alarm, it could be something that's smoke that is nothing, or something that doesn't turn into a big call, and so you don't see them really responding until they know for sure it's something real. And then mutual aid. Mutual aid is it's an interesting conversation because we need mutual aid. There's no way that the city of Keene or any community can staff for a fire like we had on Main Street. That's just not, that's just not possible. You need mutual aid. But mutual aid has to be mutual. And we do get some assistance with our fires, but when you look at our ambulance service, and you look at what's happening in our region, many of our communities aren't getting out in time to be able to answer their ambulance calls. And so that's a trend that we are concerned about. And we mentioned in the recommendations that we need to monitor what's happening in our region with ambulance service. And also that means monitoring what happens with the county, and whether or not they're successful in getting their ambulance service up and running, and what happens with Deluzio. There's a lot of changing things in the ambulance world right now, and so that's something that we will need to continue to monitor. Then we looked at things like sick time usage and other overtime drivers. What's driving the overtime other than, we have someone out for an extended period of time and we have to backfill that. So there are some recommendations that we've included as strategies to help us reduce overtime. If we're successful at that, it will help us bring down the overall cost. So some of those things would involve some contract changes. Fortunately, union participated in the staffing report, and they know where some of these concerns are, and it will certainly be part of our union negotiations. We are right now in the process of negotiating a new contract with the fire department, or the fire union, and so those are things that we're going to talk about. And then we looked at the ambulance contract revenue. So we have contracts for ambulance service with 5 communities around us. And one of the things I wanted to know was, are we subsidizing that? We don't want to, the city of Keene does not want to subsidize ambulance service for another community. So we looked at those numbers in a couple of different ways. We receive what's called a standby fee from that community, and then we receive the ambulance billing revenue. Some of the challenges that it's very clear to see is we will bill out a much higher number than we're actually able to collect. And that's really a matter of insurance and what's allowable under insurance, or Medicaid, Medicare rules, and what's happening with our billing. So we talked at the committee level about looking at how we're coding our calls, and do we need to make any changes into the way that we're coding to make sure that we're getting all that we can in compliance with those rules, and whether or not there needs to be some changes in the language of the ambulance contracts with those 5 communities. Right now, we're breaking about even. I mean, it still makes sense for us to do this, but I think we really need to do more than that. And so we're going to need to take a look at how we bill out and whether or not there'll be any need for changes. I've already mentioned the county ambulance and the Deluzio situation, and also Brattleboro services. What happens in Vermont impacts us as well, because they are also part of our mutual aid system, and there's some changes in Vermont and Brattleboro and how they're handling their ambulance, and so we'll need to monitor that as well. So the other thing that happened during this committee process, there was an opportunity to submit for an AFG grant, the SAFER grant that the chief mentioned. That grant, we did go ahead and submit, and it would allow us to bring on 4 additional firefighters. And those 4 firefighters would be paid for fully, including training and equipment, for the first year, and then it steps down. So I don't know exactly the percentages, but to 75%, 50%, and then the 4th year, it's the 100% community's expense. So it's a way to make some changes to your staffing levels over a period of time, so you don't have to come up with all the funds all at once. It's going to be part of the conversation as to whether or not we receive this grant. This staffing report includes a recommendation that we hire 4 firefighters, and we align that with this AFG grant notification. And that really could come anytime between now and September. And the way that those grants are awarded, they just keep getting awarded until they're out of money. So until we hear we are not getting the grant, we need to wait for that, because if we were to make any sort of a change before accepting the grant, we would jeopardize our ability to recoup those funds. And so we need to align with the AFG grant notification, and I'm hoping it's sooner versus later. We need to look at our ambulance billing and coding. We need to make some adjustments in our fire union contract and some of our department policies to address overtime and how overtime is calculated. We need to shorten the time frame for the hiring process. The longer it takes for us to bring someone in, the more overtime we're paying to bring somebody else in to fill that spot. We need to look at the language of our ambulance agreements, and we need to increase call department involvement. We need to look for ways to reduce expenses or increase revenue, including investigating contract and mutual aid expenses, and continue to monitor EMS changes in the region. That, in essence, is the staffing report that you have in your packet, and I'm happy to answer questions, but I first would like to pass it to the chief to see if I missed anything.
Not at all. It's exceptional. Very well done.
Okay, so a lot of information. Hopefully you had an opportunity to look at it prior to the discussion tonight. So if you have questions, we'll try to answer them, try to get some more information out there for you and for others that are watching us. Thank you, Counselor, for being here. This is a lot of information that's got to get out, and hopefully you'll tell a lot of folks of what you heard tonight. That's important for people to understand, because at some point in time, the council has to vote on this budget, this particular item, and future budgets. And a lot of what future budgets are going to look like kind of hinge on what's in this budget this year, because a lot of decisions have been made to get us to a budget that's reasonable, but we still have services that we need to provide. So this all has a major impact. Questions? Go ahead.
I'll just say, I think it's a thorough report, and it really addresses the issues with solutions. It's impressive, and thank you.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was a really interesting process to be part of that staffing committee. There was a ton of data. It was an unbelievable amount of data that was available, and that we tried to go through and find the right way to present. And I think the charts and the report that the city manager team pulled together is just, it's a great way to summarize up everything we were trying to do.
Thanks. I agree. It was a lot of work. There was a bunch of work for a lot of folks, and I think it was an opportunity for members of the department to look at things a little bit differently than it has been in the past, and gave them an opportunity to have some conversation with other members of the staff who don't get to see what happens on the street, city councilors that haven't had that opportunity to discuss things in prior times, because there really hasn't been that kind of need for these kinds of discussions. And it certainly has come up with a solution that hopefully is affordable and can be implemented. But at the same time, as the manager has listed, there are a number of things that need to be reviewed, and it's my feeling that most of that will be handled internally by the fire department as they go through and realign and do some of the things they need to do to keep up with the workload. And then when it becomes a matter that requires council assistance, that'll come forward in one fashion or another for us to be able to look at. And I think, to reiterate what's been said, there's a lot of work, a lot of good work by everybody. I think it was quite a task that was pulled off by the city manager, and I would say thank you for grabbing hold of it and whipping a few of us in line to come in and work with you. But I think this has been the first time in many, many years that one of these approaches has been taken, and it's been successful. The information's available, and hopefully the right decisions are made. I personally am fairly confident that we're going to get a grant. We deserve a grant. We're over here on this side of the state, and everybody forgets about us. It should come this way, and it's a start to work through this. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we want to accept this. You have a...
So I've written a recommended motion for you. I'm not sure if the clerk copied that same motion or not, but the recommended motion is to accept the report, which includes the recommendation to hire 4 firefighters, 1 per shift, and this will be revisited once the department is notified of the outcome of the AFG grant submission. If awarded, the SAFER grant would temporarily assist with the funding of these positions. Other recommendations of the committee should be pursued immediately. I don't know if that was included, but that's the motion.
Yes, it
that's
is. It's there.
Okay.
So I'll move that. How's that? Anybody going to second it? Any further discussion? Roll call.
Counselor Lake, yes.
Counselor Powers, yes.
Counselor Chadbourne, yes.
Counselor Remy, yes.
Thank you very much. Unanimous. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We're back here on Monday night with air conditioning, right?
And thank you to the city manager. Did you adjourn?
Adjourned. We're adjourned.